Just my opinion. Moore.
Here.
O'Kane.
Here.
Shaner. Here. Scott.
Here.
Waters.
Here.
We stand for a moment of silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have Sarah Jungers meet me at the podium there? We have a proclamation that reads, whereas 17,155 children each year are diagnosed with cancer in the United States, and 1 in 285 children will be diagnosed by their 20th birthday. The average age of diagnosis is 6 years old compared to 66 for adult cancer diagnosis. And whereas childhood cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children, and in the last 20 years, only 4 new drugs have been approved by the FDA to specifically treat childhood cancer. And whereas hundreds of nonprofit organizations at the local and national level, including the Children's Cancer Connection, Family Cancer Network, and the Unravel Iowa, are helping children with cancer and their families cope through education and emotional and financial support. Now, therefore, I, Robert E. Scott, Mayor of the City of Sioux City, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in Sioux City and encourage our citizens to support this cause that so deeply impacts families here and throughout our country. I'd like to present this to you and say a few words if you would.
Thank you for having me. My name is Sarah Jungers. I'm here with Children's Cancer Connection. We are a nonprofit that's been around in Iowa for 35 years. We serve currently over 800 families across the state of Iowa that are impacted by childhood cancer. About 150 children are diagnosed newly in this state every single year. We offer free programs all across the state, camps, hospital programs, support programs for families to meet others going through a similar journey, and that they can bond with others that only they know and understand what they're going through. This means very much to us. I was supposed to have a family with me this evening from just outside of the Sioux City area that firsthand goes through our programming and understands the impact, but I myself live in Orange City, so I was able to travel down and represent the organization. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Keep up the good work. Okay, we'll go to interviews. Kathy Paffel. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to serve.
Hello, my name's Kathy Paffel, for those of you who don't know me. I am interested in the Historic Preservation Committee. This would be the fourth committee, third or fourth committee for the City of Sioux City or board that I've applied for and been a part of. And I guess I'm just really passionate about, Siouxland. I grew up here, born and raised, moved back after college. I work in a field that lends to historic preservation, and I was asked by a fellow, or I guess a board member of Historic Preservation to apply, and so I said yes.
You were a little short on references. Is that you couldn't get any better ones than what you got?
Somebody asked me, so I used him as a reference, so good leverage there.
We won't hold that against you,
Okay,
so
thank you.
apply. Any questions?
Thank you for making the application. You'll be a great addition.
Okay.
No doubt.
For all the committees that you've already served on. I'm just looking at them. They're very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Okay, we'll go to Eric Kafka for the wastewater treatment plant. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to serve.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Eric Kafka. I am the Environmental and PSM Coordinator at Smithfield here in Sioux City. I'm interested in the wastewater project because it greatly affects the business that I'm a part of, and I'm also a community member. So it's an opportunity for me to give back to my community. I served in the Navy. I'm all about serving. And this wastewater opportunity is just a great way for me to kind of lend some of the experience that I have, and hopefully we all are the better for it. We just installed a new wastewater plant at Smithfield, Sioux City. I've been on a board of executives for the VFW. Helps build the collaborative Veterans Center in Sioux Falls. So I do have some experience with planning and just kind of listening. And that's just kind of me in a nutshell, I guess.
Questions?
Excellent. Thanks for making the application.
Yeah, appreciate your interest and willingness to serve.
We'll let you know.
All right, thank you.
All
Have
right,
a nice day.
good day. Green Valley Floyd Golf Course presentation.
Matt Salvatore, Parks and Recreation Director. Scott Harmlick is here today to give his biannual update to the City Council on the golf courses.
Okay.
And as you can see on there, our revenues are up to date, and each year is really a new record. We're about $1.5 million in revenue through August. It wasn't very many years, like 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't take in $1 million annually. So, but you'll also see on there, so our expenses are pretty reflective of the increased income. Their expenses are up about the same amount. It's really about, net money-wise, we're about on line with last year, and last year was a really nice year. COVID was a big shot in the arm for this business, and not just here in town, but nationally. So we were able to retain our new people that came out and played when there wasn't anything else that they could do, and we're very proud of that. If anybody has any questions about that, obviously you haven't all seen it yet, but I'll try to answer any questions you have with that. As per our lease with the city, it's a very unique one. I don't know anybody else in my industry that has a job like I have, where I work for a nonprofit and we lease the property from the city, and we're a nonprofit, and in addition to that, we make as many capital improvements as we can annually. We do have some money earmarked for some projects. We haven't decided what we're going to do. Really, it's kind of because what's happened at Floyd Park with the storm sewer situation, and we're just kind of waiting to see what the final thing is going to look like over there.
Hey, Scott,
yes.
can I stop you? Can you pull the microphone up just
sure.
so if people are
Yep.
listening or tuning in, they can
Okay,
hear?
sorry.
No, you're good.
So we're waiting on what we decide to do with that CIP money until it's real clear to us what the final project is going to look like at Floyd. It really is not anything we're very happy about what is done at Floyd. I think you all know that. I met with Mr. Padmore a couple weeks ago down on the number 14 at Floyd, and I think he agreed with me that it really doesn't look very good. It's impossible to maintain for us currently the way, for what has been done. We can't get any equipment in there. Mr. Fair also mentioned that on the north end, the north culvert at Floyd, where the excavating had happened, it has a cage on it, and every time it rains, all that storm water comes through there, and there is trash and there's debris, and it completely, I think you saw the pictures that I took of that drain. I mean, it's completely covered, and the city came out a couple times this year after a big rain, and they did clean it. Mr. Fair indicated that this should be our responsibility. I just want clarification on that, and hoping that's not the case. We don't feel that we should have to maintain this. We didn't do this. It was a city project. It's not what we wanted, and it's a mess after every rain. But I guess I just want clarification. I mean, whose responsibility is it to clean that mess up after every rain? And he thought it was ours. I was hoping that he was wrong. I just don't know. Do any of you know? Do you want to review this at a later time and let me know what your decision is? But I really don't want to have my employees go down in that area. As you know, it was a landfill that nobody really knew about. There's broken glass, there's broken plates, there's all kinds of debris down there, and I don't want to get down there and do it, and I don't think I should have my maintenance people do it either. So
When did you take over your lease? I can't remember, 2 years ago?
It was I believe in October, that was 2 years ago in October when I submitted the RFP.
I'm asking this question for other people who are deeply concerned that we asked the Explorers
Yes.
to bid their lease. Did you
Correct.
not have to bid your lease against people even though you've done a good job?
Well, I was asked to do that, so I did it. So, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's unfortunate. I mean, it is not unfortunate. It's part of the law that you can only have leases for so long, and
Yep.
you were successful.
No, I understand. I don't have a problem with it. I wasn't
I know.
happy about it when it
Some
first
people
happened.
do.
It took up a lot of time,
You
but
shouldn't be, the Explorers shouldn't be any different than you, is my point. I'm just.
No, I agree with you.
I want people to know we made you bid as well. so.
correct. So,
I can discuss the drainage project with Bob and get back to you and with Gordon on what Scott's referencing.
I was going to say, Scott, I meant to shoot you a text, and I'd like to follow up and even go out to the course and talk with you a little bit about it. We spoke about the matter in our Public Works meeting as well, and kind of problem solved a few different things that we think can help alleviate the situation for you. But I mean, as Gordon kind of talked to you about, a real long-term solution that you would probably like the most, as far as the pipe is going to be extraordinarily expensive for either yourself or our taxpayers as well. So I don't think that necessarily is feasible, but I think our team is open to looking into creative solutions, and I should have shot you a text, but we met about it this last team meeting and we talked about it.
yeah, I believe it was called Fleximat. Is that what you're referring to? That
Well, and I
product
was
that you can roll
referring
out?
to the mesh net and
Yeah,
stuff that
yeah.
that said was failing and stuff. So they're looking at what we can put in that's different that would probably hold a lot better.
Okay.
That type of stuff.
A cement liner, is that right, Gordon? That goes in? And then also the possibility of a different kind of a screen or a,
Yeah, Gordon Fair, city engineer. I think you're both talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
It was like a Fleximat. I think that was just that brand's name.
Right.
Similar to that, or that brand.
If it's $150 to bury the pipe.
It was $150,000 to bury the pipe when the contractor was on site, but that would be with an undersized pipe. That pipe needs to be about a 6-footer to a 6.5-footer pipe, all the way from that open ditch to beyond.
It's 150, and you're still going to have the ability to drain, I realize that. But if you had a 6-footer or 5-foot retention rather than a big ditch, I don't know the answer to that, but if that would still retain, that would seem to me to be a better long-term solution, because you're going to continue to have the crap and that's going down there, at least if it were. There used to be didn't there used to be an open deal that the water ran into from the course, if I remember right. Years ago there was.
There's open air, there's area intakes or manhole intakes
Right.
throughout the golf course.
But that's easier to clean than going down 25 feet or whatever it is.
Deep, but yeah.
I hope we look at more than one solution.
I was going to say, and I'm not sure what you're proposing, Bob, so I'll follow up
Well,
with your idea too.
Bury the pipe, and you don't have to have this big ditch. It's way too big for golfers to go down, and then you could gradually, the higher you make it, the more gradual the slope. I'm practicing engineering here, but that's what you can do. And so then, if somebody hit in there, they could still hit out of it, is all I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah, all that to say, I'm happy, and we can talk more about it, or if, Gordon, if you have an understanding, if we can look at all the different solutions to see what would be economical on both ends of it. I mean, the way I see it when I drive by is, as a former golfer, is I just see it as a hazard, I'm not going in there to retrieve my ball, I'm taking a drop. You know what I mean? And so that's, I guess, what I would do, but
You have
it's
a liability that people are going to go in there. They go into the ponds even though you tell them not to go into the ponds. They do.
Yeah, and that's, golf courses don't have signs everywhere saying enter the pond at your own risk. I can't imagine you're liable if they go in and hurt themselves there too. But all that to say, yeah, I think we should look at creative solutions to hopefully address some of your situations, but also not be exorbitantly expensive.
Well, currently we have that area marked with red stakes, red paint, and then
Yeah.
if, in golf terms, that means a penalty area.
Exactly,
And
right.
which means you have every right, I mean, you can go in there and get your ball. So if somebody wanted to go in there, and if they did, I mean, it's very possible they would get hurt.
Yeah.
But, and we don't want, so we're confused really what to do with it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm glad Mr. Fair is here. He was very helpful when he met with me, by the way, and I appreciated his efforts. But I had mentioned to him on the north end of the project, so on the, toward the clubhouse, there's a slight fall, and that happened during the excavating process, where they made a real slight fall to the big ditch, and that's the landing area. I mean, from the tee box, that's where a player would want to go, but because of that, it's not good for the hole. It's a dog leg left and it slopes this way, so it's just not proper. And what I mentioned to him was, if possible, if we could, and we would pay for it, we could bring in, he thought it'd be, what'd you say, 12 or 14, no, 8 loads, 8 or 9 side dumps.
Yeah.
If we were able to just fill that in.
Oh, to
and
like
flatten it
recontour
and
the
flatten
landing
it,
area.
so, and then would bring in black dirt, we'd put the grass seed that we want in there, and it would, at least the hole would be playable at that point. We'd still have the big, the big hole.
Sure.
But to be honest with you, right where the major part of it is, it's not really in play. It's the 40 or 50 yards that slopes down slowly. And he thought that we could do this, that would work. So I would like to ask you permission. I don't need a decision now. If you want to discuss it, I get it. But I would like permission to allow us to do that.
Okay.
To fill it in to
I
where
presented
Gordon
that
said
to-
stop, we'd stop. But I'd like to flatten that area out, so, that would be the target area to hit to.
I've presented this information to Mr. Padmore, and I'm just waiting to hear back from him.
Why don't you get with Bob and Mike when he gets back and come up with some sort of solution?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Gordon.
So,
Thanks.
as far as the other CIP projects, we did complete 2 things that didn't get completed. The parking lot of Floyd wasn't done. That is now done, which includes the right-of-way on Drewer Avenue. I can never know how to pronounce it, but I believe that's part of it. So we actually resurfaced all that, and the cement work is done in Green Valley on the north side of the clubhouse where carts are. It's much nicer. It's much cleaner. It was really a mess. So those projects are both done. That's really all I have. And like I said, once we find out what your decision is on the Floyd project, I'd be happy to report back at the next time I come, which would be in January or February, what projects we have completed. We do intend to, I believe we're going to do it on number 10, Bob, if you know the whole Bob dogleg left. There's all these trees that hide the pond, the water feature, and when a player hits it in there, you don't know if it won the pond or not. We'd like to take all those trees down and expose the water feature, and it really will be a much better hole. It'll look much nicer, much cleaner. So that is one thing that we're going to do this fall and this winter. And we may ask, it's going to be very expensive to not to necessarily cut the trees down, but if they have to, section them and haul them off, that would be expensive. We'd like permission at some point this winter to take those trees and pile them on their driving range and burn them if possible.
Are they evergreen?
Pardon me?
Are they evergreen or?
No,
just
they're a
trees?
mix of ash and locust.
Locust,
So.
dirty.
And, we all know that ash borer is coming through. And years ago, I applied for a MERD grant to get some trees, and that was approved. So we bought all these trees, and they're now, 18, 20 foot tall. So when these ash trees do start to die, we're going to have all these maples that we'll be able to get we'll be able to put those trees in where those ashes are cut down. So.
One last question for me, Scott.
Yes.
If you do end up moving ahead with bringing in the dirt, the fill, are you anticipating getting that done this fall so it can be seeded?
Yes, we'd very much like to do that. We're going to need to wait till the, semis need to come in, so it'd probably be a winter project where we'd actually bring the dirt in, because if we get semi-trailers, it would really do some damage. So we'd have to wait till the ground freezes to do it.
Right, okay. Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
okay, thank you.
Number 4 is assessment of corrective measures report for the Sioux City sanitary landfill.
Good afternoon. My name's Tim Bulow, and I also have Ben Madsen here. We're with SCS Engineers, and we do the environmental compliance work out at the landfill. And this evening, or this afternoon, we're going to be talking about the assessment of corrective measures for the landfill that's associated with groundwater, and it's this meeting is a requirement of the Iowa Administrative Code. Let's see. So real quickly, what I'm going to run through in this presentation, I'm going to briefly discuss what an assessment of corrective measures is. The purpose of this meeting, give a little groundwater regulatory overview so you can kind of see how this fits within the context of what you're required to do, and then a groundwater monitoring summary, summary of the groundwater impact, what we're recommending as a remedy, and then what your next steps will be. So an assessment of corrective measures is a report that evaluates and presents a potential remedy to address groundwater impact from a landfill. The evaluation often includes a determination of the source of the impact as part of the remedy evaluation process. What that really means is, obviously we know the landfill is likely the source of the impact, but the question remains, is that from gas or from leachate? And that will affect what your remedy would ultimately be, depending upon which one or both of those things is causing the groundwater impact. Our assessment of corrective measures was submitted to the DNR on June 30th of this year and approved on July 24th. Why are we having this meeting? To present and discuss the results of that assessment of corrective measures, and then to answer any questions or receive feedback regarding the proposed plans and actions to improve groundwater quality at the landfill. This is a really simplified depiction of the groundwater regulations. You can see on the left side, you start with detection monitoring. If something is detected statistically that's maybe a concern, you move on to assessment monitoring to see where you essentially assess, is this something that we need to go any further with, or can we just monitor it? And then in your case, there were a few constituents that were above the levels, so we moved on to the assessment of corrective measures, and then you see there up in the upper right-hand corner, we're at the public meeting stage. So after this, we'll select a remedy, implement it, monitor it, and when the remedy is done, then those wells that are in what's called corrective action monitoring will either go back to detection monitoring or assessment monitoring. Groundwater monitoring summary. There's 35 groundwater wells that have been installed at the landfill. 13 of those wells are subject to routine semi-annual sampling, which began in 1996, so it's been going on for quite a long time. There's a lot of data. Sampling is expected to continue at least through 2038, which is the end of your closure permit. And we're currently sampling for 62 different parameters from each well when we collect samples. And when we get to the corrective action monitoring stage, there'll be a few more parameters that we'll add to track the progress of the remedy. This is an overview of the landfill. If you can see my arrow, the wells that are of concern are MW9, MW3R, and MW4R3, all on the south side of the landfill. What is the groundwater impact? We have cobalt in 3R, cobalt, trichloroethylene, vinyl chloride in monitoring well 4R3, and cobalt again in monitoring well 9. Again, it's all on the south side of the landfill. The impact appears minor and likely from landfill gas, and I'll demonstrate that in a bit. And a natural attenuation appears to be addressing the impact. So here are the concentrations. The GWPS stands for Groundwater Protection Standard. That's our target. 0.0021 milligrams per liter for cobalt, and you can see where the 3 wells and the most recent sample, what the data was. It's not a whole lot higher than the protection standard. I've seen quite a bit higher at other sites. And then the TCE, trichloroethylene, and the vinyl chloride, those numbers look higher, but notice that those are micrograms per liter, so 1,000 times lower than what the milligram per liter metals concentrations are. And you can see we're not too far off of those concentrations either. This was the evaluation to determine, part of it to determine is the impact from gas or leachate, so we know what we need to go after from a source perspective. This is it's a signature geochemical method. This signature here happens to be background, which would be no impact. This is the signature of leachate from data collected from your landfill. And then this is some signatures of the 3 impacted wells compared to the background. So you can see they have a pretty similar signature. Concentration is slightly elevated, but generally the same pattern. This is comparing those same contaminated wells to the leachate, and you can see they don't look like leachate at all. So to go a little further then, this is another method that looks at bicarbonate concentrations and makes an assumption based on chloride concentrations as far as how much leachate might be present. If the contamination was from leachate, then you would expect that as the leachate concentration percentage increased, the bicarbonate concentration would increase similarly, and it would fall at least near those lines. And you can see that they basically go straight up. So landfill gas will increase the bicarbonate concentrations as well, and we're seeing that in the absence of chloride. So this is further support for landfill gas being the groundwater concern at the site. We've established that it's the contaminations from landfill gas. This is a kind of what is happening with the concentrations recently. This is the trichloroethylene, which was one of the constituents of concern in MW4R3. You can see that it's declining. This is Cis12DCE. That is not one of the constituents of concern, but I've showed it because TCE, the one that I just showed prior, when it breaks down biologically, it will break down into this constituent. So TCE will break it down into the Cis12DCE, and you can see that's declining as well. And then from there we go to vinyl chloride, which again was one of your constituents of concern. The Cis12DCE will break down into vinyl chloride. So it's also declining, maybe not as quickly, but of course biologically we expect that it's being produced at the same time. So all of this are good. These are all good indications. And then I mentioned natural attenuation appears to be addressing the groundwater impact. The documentation of that is looking at what's called electron acceptors. We all breathe oxygen. When there's no oxygen, there's bacteria that are anaerobic, and they will use different electron acceptors to metabolize the contaminants. And the first one they would use after oxygen is nitrate. So if there's contaminant biodegradation going on, you would expect the nitrate to be used up. So here you can see in MW7, which is our background well, we have nitrate present, and in the 3 contaminated wells, we don't have any. So something has used up the nitrate. I expect that's the bacteria eating the contamination. Next is iron that would be used as an electron acceptor, and when when iron is reduced in the biodegradation process, it actually becomes more soluble. So what we would expect to see if there was biodegradation occurring, that the iron concentrations would be higher in the contaminated wells, and that's exactly what we see here. And then as you move further down and get more anaerobic, you would move to sulfate. If sulfate is used up, the concentrations will get lower. And again, that's exactly what we see here in this graph. So the recommended groundwater remedy is to put in some passive vents on the south side of the landfill to try to get more of the gas out, and then monitor the groundwater to track the natural attenuation to see that we continue to head in the right direction.
They're not vented now?
Have there not been enough?
I said, is there no venting right now?
We have some venting that is outside of the waste. We made an attempt to try to intercept the migrating gas and see if we couldn't get things to clean up before we had to do an assessment of corrective measures. It's obviously improving, but not to the point that we've avoided a remedy. So at this point, we were going to propose to go actually into the waste and try to vent gas out of the waste.
We had to do that years ago in Riverside, didn't we? In the Riverside landfill?
I'm not familiar with that. So that's what we're looking at trying to do. So what comes next then? After this meeting, we'll select a remedy. Likely it'll be what I've just discussed. And then we'll notify the DNR of that selection. Then you're required within 30 days to establish a financial assurance mechanism for the corrective action. So we'll be calculating that estimate. Unlike closure and post-closure financial assurance, which you may or may not be familiar with, those you had to set aside cash for. This you don't. You just need financial mechanism. Then we'll develop a groundwater corrective action monitoring program, implement the remedy, which would be installing those passive vents, and then we'll just be monitoring the progress of the remedy toward completion. Any questions?
Suspect after that's implemented, after we start venting, how long until we're within safe ranges or within acceptable ranges?
It will likely be a while because so you saw 3 of the 5 constituents were cobalt. It's very unlikely that the cobalt came out of the landfill. What likely happened is the gas went out of the landfill, the bacteria started eating the organics in the gas, or the landfill gas is generally about half methane, half carbon dioxide, and then some trace contaminants. That carbon dioxide plus the biodegradation changes the subsurface in a manner that likely caused cobalt that was in the soils there naturally to be a little more soluble and go into the groundwater. And so that subsurface condition will have to revert back to a more natural condition before the cobalt would probably come out of solution. So that could take quite a long time. There are some, I think there's a recognition of that at the DNR and a desire to come up with some options that will speed this along quickly to an end point. So that's what we'll be looking toward, but all of this is necessary positioning to be able to take advantage of what I think is coming down the road.
Now, venting that's occurred in other parts of the landfill, that seems to be successful, right? If our groundwater and at other well sites is testing within acceptable ranges.
Well,
there is venting on other parts of the landfill, is there not?
Not, there's a few vents out there, there's not much. These are the wells that just happen to have, I think the groundwater flow, at least on that side of the landfill, is to the south, so this is more down gradient, and so it's getting the brunt of the landfill. I would say the other ones just, like I say, your contamination doesn't show a strong contaminant signature. Your levels aren't that high, so there just isn't a big impact at the landfill. So you haven't had to do any venting. The other wells just haven't really shown impact, or impact that was sufficient to require you to do anything. Like I said, there's detection monitoring, then there's assessment monitoring, and then you move on to your assessment of corrective measures and corrective action monitoring. When you go you can go to assessment monitoring, and the determination can be, you don't have to do anything, just monitor it because it's not that bad. Well, that's basically where the rest of your wells are.
And of the 13 that we regularly monitor, these 3 are on the south side. Are there any others that we're monitoring on that side of the landfill?
Those are the only 3. Well, there are other wells monitored on that side of the landfill, but they aren't compliance points. So you have bracketing wells where we've attempted to define the extent of the impact, and those are monitored regularly as well.
No, this is very interesting, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Consent agenda today is items 5 through 11. Consider them to pass unanimously unless a separate roll call vote's asked for by a council member. If you want to speak on an item, please come up as I read that item. If you want to speak up on an item not on the agenda, please come up under citizen concerns. Remember to always state your name and address for the record. I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
5 are readings of the September 11th and 12th city council meetings. 6 is a resolution adopting plans and specifications for the Southbridge Water Treatment Plant High Service Pump Adjustable Frequency Drive Project. Items 7A to D are resolutions approving continuum of care applications for planning project, coordinated entry, homeless management information system, and permanent housing, rapid rehousing grant funds.
I have one question about that. So I know that HMIS system
Yes.
has been pretty successful from what I've heard. Have we, so we had like a number of licenses for local community partners to use. Have we exhausted those?
We have not. Amy Kearns, Neighborhood Services, we have 30 licenses that we currently pay for every year, and we have not used all of them. However, we have some exciting things coming up. We have some agencies that are coming on board participating in HMIS that have never participated before, and so we're expecting to use some of those licenses for some of that staff. So,
Awesome.
yeah, so it'll be good.
Good to hear. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
I want to thank you too for doing these applications, the 4 grants. They're important steps to take in what we're trying to accomplish. And I do see you made reference to the Siouxland Coalition to End Homelessness.
Yes. I am on the board of the Siouxland Coalition to End Homelessness, and the Siouxland Coalition to End Homelessness puts together the consolidated application that goes forward with all of we are applying for 4 grants. There's a lot of other, or not a lot, but there's like 5 other agencies that are applying for funding also. And so that will all go to HUD in one big packet, requesting the funding. So
Thank you for taking important steps.
thank you.
Thank you. Actions, 8 are actions relating to agreements and contract. A is a resolution approving a cooperative agreement between the Iowa Civil Rights Commission and the Sioux City Human Rights Commission. B is a resolution approving a contract to Subservico for Military Road and Castleman Street Storm Sewer Repair Project. I need to abstain on that. C is a resolution approving a First Amendment to Pledge of Money and Naming Rights Agreement with the Long Lines for naming rights of the main arena on the 2nd floor. 9 are actions relating to property. A is a resolution scheduling a hearing on proposed amendment number 2 to the amendment and restated combined central Sioux City CBD urban renewal plan. B is a resolution scheduling a hearing on the proposed amendment number 3 to the amended and restated Donner Park urban renewal plan. C is a resolution approving the final plat of Roy Dave Addition. D is a resolution authorizing issuance of certificate of appropriateness in the historic 4th Street District for facade improvements at 1107 to 09 4th Street. HPC recommends approval. The petitioner is Nathan Kaler, plan architect. 10 are purchasing. A is a resolution approving a renewal option number 1 to the purchase order awarded to HiChem for polymer and Hyperflow. B is a resolution awarding a purchase order to Keisler Police Supply for ammunition. C is a resolution awarding a purchase order to MRI software for the renewal subscription fee for the Happy software. D1 is a resolution awarding a purchase order to Crystallization Systems for the Arts Center additional moving painting storage units project materials. D2 is a resolution awarding a service provider agreement to Crystallization Systems for the labor, travel, and site expenses. 11 are applications for beer and liquor license. See the list come forward if you have any questions. That concludes the consent agenda.
O'Kane.
Aye.
Shaner.
Aye.
Scott. Waters.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
12 is a motion appointing, appointing representative of major industrial users to fill vacancies on the wastewater treatment plant reconstruction and design advisory committee. I'd move we defer for 1 week because the one gentleman could not come in today.
Second.
Shaner.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Waters.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
O'Kane.
Aye.
13 are recommendations of planning and zoning hearing and ordinance approving a development concept plan for 2319 and 2605 and half 41st Street. The petitioner's Lieber Landholding, B&Z recommends approval. First consideration approved September 11, 2023. Somebody will need to move that.
I'll move that.
There a second?
Second?
Public hearing's now open. Anyone to be heard? Come to the microphone.
I just wanted to bring something to you. You know, the last time I was here, I was sharing with you that we're having some problem with the local police and that they had not
You
appeared.
need name and address, Kathy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Catherine Meyer, 1411 Douglas Street, Sioux City, Iowa.
Is this to speak on item number 13?
The development.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, no.
No.
Citizen concerns is at the end. We can let you know, though.
Oh, I thought you said citizens' concerns. I apologize.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Anyone to be heard?
David Raymond, 2701 41st Street. I've been advised that this is going to happen, and it seems pretty clear that it will, but I'm still going to question how and when it happens. They say that they want to complete the grading this year, but is that possible with the time constraints you've got? I don't see them getting any permits before late October, probably, at the earliest. So do you want 50 acres, maybe a couple of months worth of cut and fill work done during the winter months when the ground might be frozen? Do you want 50 acres of bare dirt sitting till March or April, at least? I understand why they want to do it now, because then the site will be ready to start utilities in the spring instead of using more time to do the grading, but I don't know that it's a good idea to do it over winter. Despite all the assurances that the dirt's going to stay on the site, I'm not so sure that the plan won't change. There wasn't a grading plan yet, so I don't know how you can be sure of that. And I know there's a waste site to the north, but will that be considered in the drainage study and all that, and in the grading permit? And then what if stage 3 gets delayed and you don't get that second connection to 41st Street, or it never happens? Then you got whatever traffic is involved coming down one street instead of two, where I'm sitting on that corner of 41st and Indian Hills Drive. If you get a four-way stop there, a lot of us along that intersection will have a very hard time getting in and out of our driveways in the morning and afternoon. Finally, I just wanted to say that if it's going to happen, how about making it a really nice development where, like other suburbs in Des Moines area have, with like a big detention basin and a green space. I know all those things aren't required now, but maybe they should be. And for an example, if you just look at the Isabella Square plan, that's only one city block. But half of that block has been given over to a detention basin and a city park, as I understand it. I'm not asking for half of this thing to be given up, but half of a 3.5 acre site might be bigger than what they're showing as green space on a 50 acre site. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rhonda Bridges, 2621 Bings Court. Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me address you today on the 130-plus conceptual residential plan. When my husband and I built our home in 2019, we knew that this would be our forever home. Merely walking from the front of our house to the backyard transports you from city to country life. I am not against controlled and regulated development. The problem my neighbors and I are feeling is the credibility of this proposed development. This is being a request to a conceptual plan versus a hard plan development that has gone through the pre-plat and platting process. This really is about grading and the contractor's desire to begin grading this fall without any approved plat or rezoning. We as neighbors, and all of us as city taxpayers, have no guarantee that this development will ever happen. None. We have no guarantee other than that the dirt is going to be, the dirt moving will take place. We still have too many questions and concerns. I have 3 basic and important questions. Number 1, this is a huge and expensive project. Does Lieber Construction have any actual development experience other than being a dirt contractor for other developers? Is his name on it? Can you give us an example we can physically look at where Lieber Construction has built a home, a townhome, or a commercial development? With interest rates now at 2.5 times higher than when this project was first proposed, does the city, or do we have any proof of financing for this project other than dirt moving? Commitment seems to be the alarming factor here. If the property was rezoned and the money and the time spent on an actual development plat, we as a community would be much more comfortable believing that this dirt contractor is going to do what he says he's going to do, and the city would have such a greater control of the dirt actual development of this project. I'm sorry, greater control of the actual development of this project. All they have provided is a pretty picture that seems to change effortlessly as questions arise and a feeling of simply appeasing the city and we as neighbors. Credibility is a big factor, and this picture provides no guarantees or control over this project. So why do we not make this developer rezone, acquire the adjacent property before moving dirt onto it, and go through the overall platting process first before any dirt work starts or commences? Why? What is the hurry?
I'm going to have you wrap it up, okay?
Okay. And as far as the grading, I just challenge, again, we see what's happening on the other side of town with the Mid-American project. And this contractor has ignored 3 stop orders and continued to grade. All I ask is for the developer goes through the correct full process to protect the development itself, the neighbors, and the community. To us, this appears as a pretty picture of appeasement and a dirt contractor in a hurry to move the dirt. We are asking you to reject this proposal to start dirt moving based upon a conceptual plan versus an actual plan that has been vetted, traffic studied, geology considered, zoning approved, adjacent land acquired, and financing proven. And I ask the council to please, if you can, individually address those questions.
I think you have to go through all that. They can't move dirt until they actually go to the final plan.
They have to submit for a preliminary plat before anything can happen.
Okay, perfect.
There are more steps, yeah, that will be taken. And I was going to ask Chris Madsen, our senior plant.
A conceptual plan.
To your first question, the gentleman's first question, because about the grading, didn't they push that back as well? The grading itself. I mean, they still have to do a grading plan. We still have to do the pre-plat, final plat. There's a lot more to this than, and I think the concept plan has been used, what, one other time in the history, at least that I've been here, and it's really misunderstood what the concept plan is. It's a concept, but they still have to go through all of the items that you had set out.
And I think the concern has been the push for this fall, for all this to happen. And what he has stated to the neighbor was just how can that be possible to get all of this done and due diligence before we proceed with the project?
But Chris, wasn't there some pushback on they delayed the grading plan itself?
Chris Madsen, Senior Planner. Correct. The first item, the concept plan, is not a substitute for the rezoning or preliminary plat. It's a pre-step, an optional pre-step. Those items would still need to be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. So that's a process that will still need to happen before anything can be done on the site. And the second item, my understanding and talking with the petitioner is that is their intent. There may be some minor, obviously with approvals, with the preliminary plat and the grading permit that comes with that, some very minor grading this year, but they would not open the site up for grading this year. Their intent is to do it in one season, but that would more than likely be next year.
I think the clear message, one of the many clear messages that the neighbors are sending to the city hall is that this is going to have to be a monitored project. I mean, they're all monitored, they're all inspected and all of that, but we want to make sure that compliance with what they say they're going to do, they will do. And I think we'll take those steps to do that as we do in most cases. But I hear that message loud and clear, so we will have to address it. We would address it anyway, but you're bringing it to the table.
What does minor mean? When he says minor grading, how do we know what minor, how do we put what that is?
My understanding would be more for the detention pond, but that would be the only item. And obviously, any grading that occurs before winter would have to be winterized before the season is over.
Do we have a plan for that? Is there anything that we can see for that?
That would be part of the preliminary plat submittal. So no, we don't have the plan at this time.
So they'll have to submit that as part of their preliminary plat to say, this is our plan before winter to be able to do this portion of it and get that okayed before getting to move forward. Because I agree with you, and I would just echo Dan's sentiments. And I've spoke with a number of your other neighbors, and just would want to reiterate that I feel the pressure that you're under. I feel the worry that you have for your neighborhood, and you're just wanting to make sure that it's done well. You know, if there is going to be development, you want it done well so that it's not just some eyesore or just some dirt pit in your backyard.
Correct.
I hear you. And I think that from my standpoint and all of the emails that I've tried answering to the citizens is I understand that. And I am cautioning the council and staff to work with the developer to make sure that this is done well. And I think I've emphasized to the developer that all eyes are on you on this project, and we're gonna really be, to Dan's point, checking in on this because we want to make sure that it's done well and those steps are actually taken so that if something were to happen, it's not just then a predicament between a homeowner going after a developer that maybe did the dirt work but is not building a home or something like that. And so you have my assurances that I'm trying to work through that process as well, because as you said, I do think we need development. We need to grow. We need to be able to expand our city in a meaningful, intentional way rather than just acting hastily. And it sounds like staff is working with the developer to do so and to take those initial steps. This one is just, it feels odd, like they're coming and proposing and then moving quickly forward.
Correct.
But I think it was the developer's notion, and Jordan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that it was more saying, this is what we would like to do. If there's an appetite, if you think the city would work with us on doing this, great. If not, I don't think that we can, we're not going to go to all the trouble of work and expense to be able to make this happen. And so this was just their initial coming to us saying, can we go through and do a full plat and a full development of this?
And that's what we're looking for, guarantees, assurances, and accountability specifically as well.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did we answer your first question about the grading? When's it going to start and what's it going to be? I want to make sure we answered that because I thought I had the answer correct on that.
David Raymond, 2701 41st. I understand about the process they have to go through to get their grading permit. I'm just saying I thought maybe the earliest they would possibly get that would be end of October or November if they did start this year. I understand that. If they're not going to start this year, that's fine. But I forgot to mention the first time through, some of the issues that I have with this, or we all should have with this, are not necessarily items that the developer is going to be required to fix. Corner radiuses at the intersections, turn lane stacking down at the farther intersection down at Indian Hills and Outer, or 41st and Outer. Those aren't really the developer's problem, they're the city's problem. And I'm afraid the city's not going to do anything about that, at least not for a very long time, if ever. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thanks, Chris.
Tim Alvano, 2701 Bings Court. I just had some questions on the grading process of the infrastructure. If they do go with it, my concern was like Dave's, 2 entrances in and out, or what are we doing?
And that's what I was going to ask next, Tim. Jordan, do you mind coming up and answer some questions? Because I did have one that I wanted to follow up about that as well. I spoke with Tim earlier in the week and was following up with you about the second entrance and the timing of that. Some of the neighbors, Tim in particular, was asking me about this. And Dave, is it? I forget. I think David brought it up as well earlier. Just trying to think about that second entrance, if that other, western entrance opens, what that looks like, when that is, because how much would, you get done before that would happen, and when can they expect that? I mean, they're just looking for something a little more concrete than, well, when we get to the phase 3, or if that happens, or it could be then. They're just looking for that assurance.
I think that that's something we could probably answer more concretely within the preliminary plat process.
Okay.
And just see if we could get that second entrance open before, phase 2, phase 3 would go on. So I think that that's something that we could answer more concretely at a later date. And right now, I just don't have a great answer for you because it's just a concept plan.
Yeah. And does that make sense? I mean, that he can't do it right now, but I agree that it's like when we go through the preliminary plat, when we go through those steps, those are the types of things that he's going to have to break down. Same with the grading permit this year. You know what I mean? He might be able to tell us that it will be scaled way back due to the timeline that Dave brought up, but I think saying, concretely, what are you going to do? It's not the time yet for that, but that would still happen.
Because all 3 of us, it affects us because we're all on the corners.
Yes.
That are here today.
Yep. And so that's their worry, is that where's the other outlet, and what's the sooner we can get a second outlet so things aren't backed up.
Yeah, no, and we understand those concerns, and I think it's something we could try to address as quickly as possible in this process. In terms of the grading, I think that there's maybe a little bit of confusion on that. Initially, we had kind of thought that this process was going to be a little bit quicker, and that it would be attainable to get grading done this year. I think given, some of the setbacks that we've had and additional questions, I think it's becoming a better plan in the process. And so, ultimately I appreciate it. But I think that given the time of the year, we haven't even submitted a preliminary plat to get on planning and zoning to city council, have dates set on that. I think that as we get further along in the year, I think that it is more doubtful that a substantial amount of grading occurs this year. So.
My other question is on the traffic study, when does that take place? What phase of the game?
That would be.
Well, Chris could speak to that too.
Chris or Gordon might be better. We require that as part of the preliminary plat.
Yeah. So after this is just, again, a concept plan that basically says, can we go to the next step? And so it would be a part of that preliminary plat. When they say, here are the deadlines, here are the things that are going to happen, they would have to submit the traffic study so we know what to anticipate as a city, and we know what we're going to expect them to help us do with traffic.
Well, that brings my point to timing. Maybe the traffic study could time out when school's not in session during Christmas or something. Is that?
No, it would.
You know what I'm saying?
I see what you mean. Do you see what he means, Chris, as far as when we would do that?
They got to do it.
Yeah, I think it can't be, the sample size can't be just cherry picked by a certain.
It'll be done by a third party, correct?
Thanksgiving break is right in there. Yeah.
No, it'll be done by a third party and it'll be done correctly.
You got to get somebody like Stanley Engineering that knows how to do those. That's a very technical deal.
Right.
I understand that. That's all Greek to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But no, they have to hire somebody that is a professional in that area.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Any other questions for me or?
I didn't want to say, I apologize, I did not have time to give you a call back before the meeting, but
No worries.
I appreciate that you took my recommendation into consideration. And that was one thing that wasn't presented to us last week, and so if you would like to talk about the kind of buffer area that is kind of being incorporated.
Yeah, so I think we'd heard it from several different recommendations to maintain a more natural barrier to North Middle School. And so above North Middle School, we're going to put a 10-foot barrier along the property line with native grasses to continue that slope and just make it more appealing. I also think that, and I discussed this with Matthew, putting kind of a buffer if the school would be okay with us putting a sidewalk into the southwest there, having that have a native grass buffer as well instead of just, regular lawn grass, so.
I appreciate that.
Sounds like it's a definite work in progress and that you're willing to listen and do what we can to get along and to make it the best it can be.
Yeah, no, we want, this to be well received, and taking feedback from the community and you guys is something that you.
And that's important. I think it's important to the residents too. I mean, we heard when you were talking about walking to your backyard and being transported from the city to the countryside. And we want to try and preserve the land that we have as best as we can, so.
Absolutely.
Well, and I had the same point, again, I think it was Dave or someone brought it up. The big thing that I keep thinking about is, when I visit other communities or visit friends and stuff like that and go into their neighborhoods that are newer neighborhoods, I appreciate how well it's planned out, and that there are trails or sidewalks that connect, and a lot of the trails go straight to the parks, so that all the kids could maybe go to the parks and there's just an outdoor space. Because I said this the first time it came to us, I have a dog and I want to take her on walks and be able to feel safe in the neighborhood doing so, and that there's green space for kids and pets and whatever you need that to be. So I think we just need to be intentional going forward rather than after the fact. And that's where I've appreciated the conversation early on. I know that more of that will happen with the preliminary plat, like the centralizing of the park or, like different areas that we can include for park and green space. But yeah, we just need to be intentional. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Scott?
I'm going to abstain in the next item. The attorney for Mr. Lieber has questioned my unbiased opinion, which it's funny because the Bertrands when Mid-America came up, questioned my unbiased opinion, and I abstained on that. I'm not abstaining because of any conflict of interest. I have no financial gain in any of these deals. So it can be interpreted however you want, but it ends up being a no vote when you have to abstain. And so I'm going to abstain because you can't ask me to vote on one thing and then tell me not to vote on another thing.
Waters?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
O'Kane?
Aye.
Shaner?
Aye.
You guys want to do second and third? Well, we already,
This is second.
That was second.
that is second, yeah. They got it, a second, third. Do you guys want to do third reading?
Yes, please.
Somebody move that. That? What's that? He needs to speak in the mic. Yeah, you got to come to the microphone, Rick.
Rick Bertrand, 1501 PV Street. So you guys are going to waive next week's third reading on this?
Well, we have the option, if no member objects, that we can just go forward to the third reading.
I would think that the people behind me in the community would like a third reading on this as more information is gathered. I don't think it's appropriate for, just my opinion, to waive a second reading. I think the community, as they continue to gather facts, things get changed, should have the opportunity next week to speak on this. Please, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess to respond to that, and to answer the mayor's concerns and any neighbors that are here is, I guess I would say that I think the developer has done really a lot of due diligence and having a public meeting, a neighborhood meeting. You know, we've never had a developer do that before, where we tried to bring a lot of the neighborhood together to talk about this project. And then we've had different emails and exchanges and multiple times to be able to come here and hear this. And then I would also reiterate that it's just a work in progress. This is simply a concept plan, and we'll get way more into the weeds, so to speak, in the development and preliminary plat process. So I guess that's why I would feel comfortable moving forward with the third reading, because we've done a lot of that due diligence. So that's why I will be supportive, just so the neighbors know at least of why I would support moving forward.
I've been one to ask for the due diligence and to have the neighborhood meeting, and but appearance is important as well. And there's already a level of trust that we're going to have to work on between the parties, including the city staff. And I don't want to appear that we're running something through unnecessarily. And I was concerned early on about the concept plan delaying the project even further, because the concept plan was, no pun intended, but it was a new concept for all of us. And so I think unless staff, Chris, unless you tell me there's reason not to do the third reading a week from today, I guess I'd be more comfortable with it, just because we're trying to build up that trust.
I would have to defer to the petitioner on their time frame, but from a staff perspective, there'd be no issue with bringing it back next week.
Voting today, waiving it, though?
No.
We have a motion and a second?
We do not.
I'll second.
If you're going to waive the rules.
I'll move. I thought Julie did, but I'm sorry.
I already moved it.
Second.
Scott?
No.
Waters?
Aye.
Moore? O'Kane?
No.
Shaner?
So we'll be back next week then, if anyone, or if any of you know any other neighbors that would like to come and speak their piece or say anything, just let us know. Is it about this item?
It's about a lot of items, just this kind of process in particular. Tricia Frederick, 322 34th Street.
Okay.
I just like it to be known that the community really, truly feels like a lot of things get shoved through. And not this specific item. This isn't what I'm speaking about. Just in general, that things are getting rushed through without enough transparency or communication to the community. So I would hope that this council would take that under advisement moving forward. I just feel like there's a lot of it, a lot. So that's all I had to say. Just wanted to be heard that there's just a lot of things that seem to get shoved through and people don't hear about. So I think when you're rushing through things, sometimes it's not leaving a really good taste in the mouth of the community. Okay?
I'll have a follow-up question though, just because I've always been a curious person. How do you consume the news of what happens at city council? Because I'm always one of those where it's like, in the name of transparency, I mean, we get on average, at least 200 pages worth of homework every week to read through for items. And I think the news does a good job of trying to cover some of the top items that would be of interest to the public. And I know our communications team does a lot on social media. Is there something more we could be doing? Because all of the items are probably important to someone.
Right, and I don't disagree with that, but I think when you've had, like this one, for instance, you've had some public meetings and you've had some things. The water waste treatment plant, for example, is another issue where there were a lot of people that wanted to come to the table and sit down, and I think that they needed to be heard because I work in lending, and I can tell you right now that there is a very serious situation coming our way if we continue to increase the property taxes at the rate we are right now. I don't know if any of you are aware of how to compile or comprise or calculate property taxes, but we're looking at about $540 per $100,000 of value if the mill and the levy don't change moving forward 18 months ahead, because we are 18 months in arrears on our property taxes. You know, and thank God our governor had the forethought to actually go out and do the 65 plus assistance for the taxpayers, but us raising our property taxes at the rate we're going right now isn't going to help our people on fixed income in our retired community. And first-time homebuyers, we have worked for years, and I do mean years, to get the Iowa Finance Authority to increase the amount of a home loan program for down payment first-time homebuyer assistance. And we finally got them to raise it from $5,000 cap to 5% of the purchase price. And our property taxes are going to price them right out of being first-time homebuyers, because they have to be at 45% back-end debt-to-income ratio to qualify. And with what our income is in our area versus what our property taxes are going to, we are pricing people right out of homes in our town. So there's one thing that was a rush. So if we get stuck as the taxpayers with the big gap of what the wastewater treatment plant will be, it's going to fall on the shoulders of the taxpayers. That's who pays for that. And it's not your money to spend, it's not my money to spend, it's their money. And we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we're doing everything possible to not price ourselves out of community. And that's what we're doing. Sioux Falls has grown exponentially. They used to be a lot smaller than us. So we need to do things a little differently. And if that means making sure that we're getting better communication out there and not making knee-jerk decisions and rushing everything through, then that's what we need to do. Elected officials are here to represent the people.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay.
14 is reconvene the hearing from September 11th in consideration of the appeal of Rick and Russ Bertrand and Sundown Moon Up Development. Somebody else will have to move that. I'm going to be abstaining, not because of a conflict of interest. So the vote still has to be 3 to Mr. Moore, I think, is going to abstain. So all 3 of you have to vote whatever way you're going to vote, because I don't have a. You do, but that still doesn't reset.
It doesn't recalculate the vote. It still requires 3.
I understand, but if you declare you have a conflict of interest, it doesn't go down as a no vote. It's
Correct. Yours will be noted as an abstention, but an abstention without a conflict of interest is an automatic no vote under the council's rules.
Well, I will move the.
Second.
Julie seconded.
That will just open the hearing.
Okay.
We have to vote on that.
You do the item.
Yes, I guess we can.
Do you call the roll?
We'll call it just to open it for clarification purposes, so there's no question.
Waters?
Aye.
Moore?
Abstain?
O'Kane?
Aye.
Shaner?
Aye.
Scott?
Abstain. 15's, we need a motion to go into closed session.
Sorry, this is the opportunity for the council to ask any questions of the parties related to the written materials that were submitted. The record for the hearing has been closed related to additional testimony or information that can be provided from the parties, but the council may ask questions of any of the written materials that were submitted up until the deadline this week.
You guys have any questions?
Additional questions? No.
No.
Now the council can elect to move to go into closed session to deliberate the issue and return with a decision.
I thought we had Stephen come here, because I thought you told everybody they had to furnish it by letter, but you tell me.
Stephen Pastalka, City Legal. If you want to hear additional arguments from the parties, you can. It's just there can't be any additional factual record presented here.
minute. What do you guys want to do?
Well, I'm fine. If you want your 3 minutes to just rehash or state your argument or your position, I mean, I don't mind.
Rick Bertrand, 1501 Phoebe Street. And there's no drama tonight, guys. The drama's over. The vote's going to the vote. So there's going to be no big show. Just keep it simple real quick, though, that what's interesting is, again, I want to just, do you see the report that Russ turned in? I hope you looked at the information that was there. It was extremely educational on the aquifer itself. Terracon report was basically just submitted to show that Mid-America did their diligence. They did what needed to do to identify that they shouldn't put dirt on the site. They shouldn't put it next to the site. It should have been remedied. The bottom line is Lieber did all of this dirt moving and did not do anything about it, didn't do any of these studies before they moved it. Second of all, their engineer themselves came out and said that Gordon and their engineer approved this all in one swoop, said that they did not do anything to the aquifer by moving 175,000 yards of dirt. That's fine, they said that. Well, I'm not quite sure how they did that. When Councilman Shaner asked their engineer, he didn't know what the aquifer was, how deep it was, where it was, yet he was determined that by moving 175,000 yards of dirt, they did not need to remedy this or do any studies to do that. That's fine. His own expert actually didn't do them any favors last week either, which is their engineer, and they came out and said basically is that the retention pond itself that was built is part of the future development, which then excludes them from basically the code, 20.30.40. They disqualified themselves by putting this basin in, this retention pond. Is what that has done is now they've created the next step towards the development. You can't do that. It specifically says that right in the code. Under no circumstance shall a grading permit be issued, nor shall be grading commence if you're bringing a subdivision to grade. So their own engineer came out last week in his own testimony and said that they went out and they did this because it's going to be a retention pond or a basin, but it's for the future development. And the one question that I emailed you guys, is real simple. Number one, they defied 3 orders. Every dirt guy in town is watching this. If you don't drop the hammer on this, how do you think you're ever going to get control of a dirt site again? You can't. They know it. Now you've got a classic Sioux City scenario where a guy goes out, does what he wants, moves the dirt, and then comes in and begs for forgiveness, and we're going to give him one more grace. The reality of it is they've created the nuisance. What we are asking for you to do is to them to abate the nuisance, get the dirt off the site, return it to its natural state, go through the proper process. They did it wrong. Every dirt guy is watching. Don't reward bad behavior, guys. Look at these poor people on the north side, what they're doing. This dirt, they never should have had been stirred up. This development on the north side should be flying through with no questions, no worries, and they're questioning the process because the credibility of the city is on there. I'm asking for a no. Tell them to move the dirt off. If you want us to go to civil court, we're going to go to civil court if that's where we head. And I get that's what keeps getting told to us is that, well, this is a civil issue. That's fine. But the city itself, by issuing the permits they did, and them basically saying, we're not going to stop and continue to move the dirt, you have every right to tell them to move that dirt off the site, return it to its natural site. Councilman O'Kane, we sat there a year and a half ago, and I said, this is what the situation that we're going to be in right here. And again, I can beg and I can cry and I can make big screams. I'm done with that. The reality of it is you guys know what's right and wrong. And what they did was wrong. It was wrong what they did to the city. It's wrong what they did to the aquifer. And if you want to make a stand to the other dirt guys, get it off the site and be done with it. But again, we're done, guys. I appreciate you hearing me, and I'm going to go back to my regular life. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to be heard on this item?
Yes, on this item.
This is just the opportunity for the parties to make comment. The hearing is, there's no addition, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you, John Hines, Curry Huff Law Firm for Lieber Construction. Just very briefly, it was my understanding that council follows Robert's Rules of Order for abstention. If there's a separate rule that we're not aware of for tabulating the votes, I just wanted to make you aware of that.
In the council rules, it specifically states that an abstention without a conflict is a no vote.
Okay, and that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that.
Sure.
The only other item is that it's been reported by multiple sources that Lieber has, quote, violated 3 work orders. That's not true. If you read the appeal that Lieber submitted, the very issue is that Lieber asked this council to decide that there was no basis for any work order and that any of the work orders that were provided did not follow the code. But setting that aside, my understanding is that now all of the code requirements have been fulfilled. The city's engineering division has determined no hazards exist. But for this appeal, those orders would have already been lifted and this project would be done. So with that, thank you for your time.
Somebody needs to move to go into closed session.
So I would move to go into closed session.
Second?
Moore. O'Kane.
Aye.
Shaner.
Aye.
Scott.
Abstain.
Waters.
Aye. Yep, I would make a motion to return to open session.
Second?
O'Kane.
Aye.
Shaner.
Aye.
Scott.
Abstain.
Waters.
Aye.
Moore.
Abstain.
I wanted just to make the announcement that today we will be holding a vote on this decision. However, we will take the time and prepare a written decision that should be available within 2 weeks. So we will have that written out and the justification provided for the decision today. With that said, I would move to affirm the decision of engineering to allow a grading permit with the condition that any future dirt to be moved to the site be not within 50 feet of the Bertrand property, and any dirt that has been put there since, or any dirt that has been put there be removed to the 50-foot margin that are 50 foot from the property line that was originally declared in the permit.
Second.
Shaner.
Aye.
Scott. Waters.
Aye.
Moore.
Abstain. Conflict of interest.
O'Kane.
Aye.
I make a motion to reverse the decision of engineering's stop work order.
Second?
Scott.
Abstain.
Waters.
Aye.
Moore.
Abstain. Conflict of interest.
O'Kane.
Aye.
Shaner.
Aye.
Okay. Citizen concerns. Sorry to keep you all waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, no kidding. This is your moment.
My moment. Hey, hi, everybody. Catherine Meyer, 1411 Douglas Street, Sioux City, Iowa. And now I have two things to comment on. One, I would like to make a professional recommendation to you at City Council about this subdivision. Before I came to Sioux City, I was a real estate analyst, and I did the research on subdivisions this size and up to about 2,000 lots.
Oh, wow.
I was the CEO and the original developer of Market Graphics, which is the second largest real estate research firm in the United States. That being said, this is being done backwards and to allow grading before you have a permanent plan and know that there is financing in place could put the city in jeopardy financially. I would like to recommend the city consult someone who has done a large number of subdivisions this size, and I'm going to shoot some names out here. And these are in Omaha, so they're close. Bob Horgan on the luxury side, Horgan Development, Gene Graves, GDR, with middle-class homes, and Gail, just a minute here, let me get us.
You can submit it to us at another time too.
Yeah,
or
but I would
let us
highly
know.
suggest that because being involved in the land development business as many years as I was, and as a real estate broker, and involved in land development, as well as sitting on a board, a loan board, I think the city may be putting themselves out for a potential lawsuit from home owners around that area. And, you know, in that area also, the grading, I believe, is on hills, if I'm right. I haven't been watching it. There could be some potential problems with allowing the grading first before that last plan, because once the land is graded, you got
But to be
problems.
clear, we clarified that's not happening.
But anyway, I'm just suggesting, I think it would be wise, but those three people are very experienced in multiple land development scenarios. That being said, I just want to leave something with you today. I was here just about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, about a problem when police didn't come when there was a break-in at one of my properties. But I had a theft, and actually, I spoke to, I believe, Mr. Moore with the chief before, about a $10,000 theft, and it was never investigated, even though the records show they were. I had somebody come to my house last Friday. They know where the property is, and like I said, it's about a $10,000 theft. They're willing to say who stole it. I went to the police and said, do that. I have emails back and forth that says, well, if you know where it is, go get it. And the other one says, basically, I don't like you. I think you're bullying me to do you a favor. And that's pretty inappropriate from our police department. But I want you to see this, because if this comes up with $100,000 worth of loss that I can document, we got a bigger problem.
If you want to, yeah, give it to maybe Mike and he can scan it and make sure we all get a copy.
And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Patiently waited as well.
I've tried to wait patiently. My name is Lori Taylor. I live at 1617 South Fairmont. My concern is with the City Inspections Division and their enforcement of City Ordinance 1732, which is the weed abatement notice.
Okay.
I was served a weed abatement notice on 6/21 of this year. I mowed, weeded, and then I was cutting and removing volunteer trees. I had to stop removing the volunteer trees when the chainsaw broke on the chainsaw I was using. I informed the city of this. The city contractor weed whacked many of my flowers, and it was early enough in the season, so the flowers and herbs did recover. I called the city inspection services and was not given a suitable answer why flowers and herbs were cut. I own a cut flower farm. I sell at the Sioux City Farmers Market as well to florists and event designers, and I rely on a lot of the flowers and perennials that I have in my yard to supply, and especially this year because we had a major grasshopper hatch at our farm, and they ate all of our things, and we had to replant. I was served a second notice on 7/31 of 23, so just a little bit over a month after the first notice. I was in Wyoming when I was served. I called the inspection services upon my return to home. I stated that I needed time to mow and weed since I had been out of town. I was told I was already given a week. The re-inspection was scheduled for 8/9 of 23, the day I called when I returned home. I stated I had mowed before leaving town, and that was when we got all that rain. So things had grown up quite a bit since then. And I'd been pulling the weeds and everything since their contractor had taken care of things in July. I was given a reinspection date of 8/14/23. I called inspections and services, told them I had pulled the weeds between my flowers as requested on their notification. If the weeds are growing in flowers, they must be done, which I did. I told them that everything was left were the flowers that I used to cut for my cut flower farm. I requested a call from the inspector if anything else needed done. I received no communication from the city. I called the inspection services late in the day on 8/14/23 to see if everything was okay, and I was told no notes were in the file, but it could take a couple of days for them to get entered. I called the inspection services again on 8/16 and was told there were no notes and everything must be okay. I again left my phone number, requested a call if everything was not okay. I didn't receive any communication from the city. On 8/1/23, I received a phone call from my medically sensitive and fragile son that he had been woken up by the sound of chainsaws at about 10:30 in the morning. I arrived home at about 1 p.m., found that all my flowers and herbs had been cut to the ground. like this short. The contractor, Brian, was still present. He stated
I'm
he.
going to need you to kind of wrap it up.
Okay. He stated that he told the city that they were flowers and not weeds, and I don't know what city employee this was, but a city employee told him that they didn't care, everything was overgrown, and to cut everything to the ground. He attempted to contact Sheila Rager, and she didn't answer her city-issued phone. He called her personal number. She answered. He told her where he was, and then I wanted to talk to her. She refused to talk to me and told me to call the inspection services. Carly at Inspection Services did not understand why I was calling her about the issue. I told her that Sheila had told me to call. She asked if I wanted Sheila to call me. I told her I wanted Sheila's supervisor to call me, and I still have not received any communication.
What's your phone number?
712-898-8006.
Mike,
Yep, I'll follow.
tomorrow.
I was gonna say, and I would just vouch too. I mean, I know her and I live in this neighborhood and I've always driven by and I know where you have the flowers and kind of that different area. And the last time I drove by, I was pretty shocked to see everything was cut so short, and
Yeah.
I knew it hadn't been that way in 10 years, and
It
so I
makes me
didn't
want
know.
to throw up.
Because, yeah, it's been 10 years and she's at the farmer's market every single week selling the flowers and stuff, so.
And I was also a certified wildlife
Yeah.
habitat and pollinator, and that is gone. And I've done a detailed list of the flowers, lost revenue and things, so would you be able to scan that in as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I do have
Absolutely.
pictures
Yep,
that
if
I
you wanna
had
give that
printed
to
off as
Mike.
well.
And you're a master gardener and worked in that
I
program.
am a master
and-
gardener
yeah.
for 20 years, and so it's,
Sorry.
it might be a little issue to everybody, but it's.
No, it's not a little issue to us either. We can see that you're very upset.
So I just think their interpretation of the code needs to be looked at.
And that's where it's challenging is probably, yeah, exactly, is the direction for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. O'Kane,
Nothing today.
Julie,
The same, I think in light of the time that we've spent. Save it till next
Yeah,
week.
exactly.
next time you could leave a little candy for Dan and I, but Alex.
The only other thing that I wanted to mention quickly was that tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the Public Museum, I would just invite council to be a part of it. It's going to be the Siouxland Street Project Community Meeting. I'm sure some of you are on that or were invited, but I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. I'm not able to make it, for a long story of a reason why I can't, but so I won't be able to be there, but I just wanted to urge people to go to hear
What time
what
is
their results were from
9 o'clock.
9 a.m. What the
At the
results of all.
museum.
Okay.
Unless there's a Zoom option, I might see if I can at least just listen in. So. That's all I.
Okay, Dan?
I'm glad Captain Bertrand is still here. I just want to share with everybody that police officer Kevin Cram in Algona was shot and killed in the line of duty. That's just really hard. It's just really hard to take. Algona is my wife's hometown, and I don't know how to stop these things from happening, Captain. It's just terribly sad. And I just want to ask everyone to remember Officer Kevin Cram's family in your thoughts and prayers going forward. And for all those that protect us day in and day out. So that's all I have, Mayor.
I had the privilege of representing the city council at the Briarcliff President's inauguration last week, and it was a great ceremony, and we pledged our support to help them as much as we pledged to help Morningside, so. I move we adjourn. I move we adjourn.
Second.
Waters.
Aye.
Moore.
So
Aye.
O'Kane.
Aye.
Shaner.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye. You can do that.
So it's like.